Okay, welcome everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings to our in-person and online guests through the Facebooks. And welcome to our third Ballard Institute Puppet Forum for the spring of 2023, Jumaadi, from Wayang Kulit to Contemporary Art. My name is John Bell. I'm the director of the Ballard Institute here at the University of Connecticut. And to my left are Dr. Matthew Cohen and Dr. Makushla Robinson, who will be introduced a little more elaborately in a second. And on the screen behind us is Jumaadi, who's the special guest and subject of this forum. Before we begin, I wanted to say a couple of things about what's happening here at this very busy time at the end of the semester at the Ballard Institute. Next Tuesday and Wednesday, the 18th and 19th of April, right here in this room, Ramayana, A Tale of Trees and Wood, an original performance by Yukon Puppet Arts under the direction of Professor Matthew Cohen and Rahul Kunathara, will be presented, drawing on the traditions of Topavakutu shadow puppetry and some southern India, and Wayang Kulit shadow puppetry from Java and Bali. That will be performed with live music and classical Indian dance. Awesome. On Saturday, April 22nd, Oma by Sandglass Theatre will be presented, a new family show by Shoshana Bass and Yana Zeller from the Putney, Vermont-based Sandglass Theatre, an intergenerational tale about Grandma, or Oma. And on Thursday, April 26th, in the same place, we'll have our next puppet forum, The Making of Feel Your Best Self Puppet Building and Video Production, in which Staff Shear, our graduate assistant and a performer with Feel Your Best Self, will lead a discussion with director and producer Sarah Nolan, puppet builder John Cody, and supervising producer Heather Ash, all of whom are Puppet Arts alumni, about building the puppet characters and videos that are part of the award-winning Feel Your Best Self project in interdisciplinary collaboration between UConn's Collaboratory on School and Child Health and the Ballard Institute, really organized by our colleague Emily Wicks, who's the manager of operations and collections here. On May 13th, Saturday, Marta Moselle will perform Please Ship This Wet Gift by Brave Bucket Company, a clown presentation. So those are things that are happening here, together with final exams and graduation and the opening of a new Jumaadi exhibition, which I want to talk about in a second. I wanted to say a little bit about Jumaadi, who was born in East Java, trained at the National Art School in Sydney, Australia, with a BFA and MFA. He lives in Yogyakarta and Sydney, and his work is widely featured in public and private collections across Australia, Asia, and Europe, such as the National Gallery of Australia, Museum of Contemporary Art, and Art Gallery of New South Wales. His works are influenced by Indonesian art, as we'll see, Javanese folklore and poetry, and Jumaadi works with a wide range of mediums, including painting, sculpture, photography, poetry, and performance, a lot of which you can see in the exhibition in the contemporary art galleries. His oil and acrylic paintings are executed in a variety of materials such as cloth, canvas, and buffalo hide. Dr. Makushla Robinson is the director of the Contemporary Art Galleries, or Gallery, across the street, and an assistant professor in residence at UConn's Department of Art and Art History. There's not much more of your bio, and I was going to look in your Facebook. No, I didn't do that.
It's not about me. We don't need to know.
It's not about you, although espresso.
Dr. Makushla Robinson loves espresso and cheese. That's pretty much my bio for today.
Very good. Matthew Cohen is a professor of puppet in the Puppet Arts program in UConn's Department of Dramatic Arts and a scholar practitioner specializing in global traditions of puppet theater, Indonesian performing arts, intercultural and transnational performance, and cultural heritage. Super exciting. In today's forum, and by the way, if you haven't already and you're sitting here and you'd like to sign our mailing list, our attendance sheet, it's moving around the audience area, And if you just came in, please have some tea and some cookies. Save the ones with the no. In today's forum, we want to explore a particular aspect of Jumaadi's creative process, how Wayang Kulit, the tradition of Javanese shadow puppet theater, provides a key source for inspiration and techniques, and how Jumaadi's own shadow puppet plays, performed mainly using overhead projectors and other modern technologies, depart in significant ways from this tradition. We want to consider the nostalgic pull of Wayang Kulit, conditions of art making in both Indonesia and Australia, and the possibilities opened up through travel and cosmopolitanism. I forgot to say, before turning to my colleagues, that today, in fact at 5 o'clock, the aforementioned cheese that Dr. Robinson talked about was served at the opening of the Contemporary Art Gallery's new exhibition, Migration of Flora, and that is going to be up at the gallery at 830 Bolton Road through May 4th. So I hope all of us here will go and see that. Okay, so I'm turning it over to my colleagues, Makushla and Matthew, however you want to take this.
Thanks, John. And I should say Selamat Datang to Jumaadi. We've never actually met in person, although we've been following each other through Facebook and social media. And it's a great honor to be able to have this chat with you.
Terima kasih, Pak Matthew. Thank you, Pak Matthew.
I understand Makushla has a different connection with you.
Yeah, Jumaadi, we met a very long time ago, it feels like now. I think I was maybe 23. I just started a museum and we were part of a curatorium together at the Flore Center for Contemporary Art. And I, for so long, wanted to work with Jumaadi and this Tree of Life program that is being sponsored by the Global Affairs Institute here at the University of Connecticut, presented really the perfect opportunity to engage with this work. Jumaadi had actually fortuitously just staged an exhibition in Sydney titled Tree of Life. So I was really happy to have that opportunity to build on the broader themes at play.
So what we propose to do in this time here is to talk about your background and your approaches to making art. Specifically, as John signaled, the relationship between your art-making practice and the Wayang tradition as a key source. And we know that that doesn't exhaust the sources of your art, but being that this is a forum sponsored by the Ballard, we thought it best to focus in on that work in particular. We'll start with some questions and interweave some videos, and then to look at some of the work which has been selected for this event. And some of it, I understand, is actually on display. Is that right, Makushla? Or will be shortly on display. So encouragement for the online viewers to actually visit the exhibition, Migration of Flora, which is on until May 8th. That's right. So just to start with, Sidoarjo is an unlikely beginning place for an artist on the global art market. And I'm wondering, and for me as a historian of Indonesian performance, Sidoarjo actually has a little bit of a black mark attached to it. It was known in the early 20th century as the graveyard of theater, the place where theater troupes went to die. The theater troupes who played there routinely went bankrupt because of lack of audiences. So this is the 1910s and 1920s. And it's out of that lack of a cultural kind of base that one of Indonesia's first very big sandiwara groups was formed, a group called Dardanella, intentionally began in Sidoarjo because there were so many unemployed actors who were stranded in this town in East Java. So it has a place within the history of Indonesian art as an unlikely beginning place for a major theater company. And I'm wondering, what kind of art, so I'd like to talk first about your training and background. What kind of art were you exposed to growing up, and how in the world did you make a decision to go into art, to go off to Australia and to and to embark on this very risky, precarious career without a local infrastructure of arts, at least as far as I know about, in Sidoarjo itself.
Terima kasih Pak Matthew. So I answer this as much as I can.
Okay.
Yeah. So Sidoarjo is a south part of Surabaya, which is Surabaya was always a bigger city.
Yeah.
And as I grew up, it was still has a lot of the evidence of swamp, mangroves. So a lot of water, kind of wetland life. It's fast enough, the industrializations and also development and buildings cover most of the ground, becoming housings, and which lead to the sort of cheaper options for artists and scholars, and also for people from Surabaya to move into, which now Sidoarjo itself has a lot of great musicians and traditional artists from Banyuwangi, from Malang. So there's in a way there is some kind of lively artistic, like compare similarly to like Tangerang in Jakarta or something like that. So that's the background. But as I left the town in 1992 or 1993, it was still has not much of artistic traditions. My first encounter with visual art, I always have loved like reading poetry and stuff as a high school student, but also exposed to the postcard making, kind of street painter. They paint postcards for Idul Fitri or for Christmas or for New Year, and I was getting involved with that at the very beginning as a end of high school student. So that was my first encounter with visual art. But then my love was always with poetry, and I didn't consider visual art as much at that time. But then I moved to Jogja. Actually, when I went to Sydney, I was going to study photojournalism, which has more like a job potential and a bit more like the idea of being wildlife photographer or something, like carrying cameras, big lenses, going up and down the hill, and that was my imaginations. But then I encountered in a small exhibition on a community gallery near where I live, an exhibition of photography done by art students or art schools graduated. So I realized that actually in visual art there is also photography within it as a department and as a study. So that was my first exposure to that. Actually, visual art is not just drawing and painting as I understood it. So I get into that, and but the school that I went was based on abstract expressionism, which a lot of the teachers were trained in New York Studio School in the 70s. Late 70s, and then they went back to Australia. Also, they spread the idea of constructing picture with with a lot of abstraction concept, like the training in New York City School, I believe. And so we did that for 3 years, but I was never happy. I was very happy enough in the way that how we construct picture, imageries, one tools to it. But there was no narrative, something that I have been inside me, was longing for, and also abstraction was very difficult to bring back to Sidoarjo. When I see my parents or see my family, how I talk about it, and I find it very difficult. That's when I actually make friends with a lot of traditional, as we said before, like this is like 10 years later from my immigrations, my migrating to Australia, which is 2003. So I left like 93. Anyhow, Sidoarjo has changed already, or I see something that I haven't seen before. So I make friends with the local puppet masters and scholars for the performing art in Surabaya, which is Wirwatikta. And I hang around with people like Mas Toro, Mas Wandi, from East Java. They're from Banyuwangi traditions, which open a lot of my perspective in actually a lot of folk traditions in East Java and how they depicted. Also, one of the first time that in 2003, the first time that I realized that puppetry has two elements. One is like the visual art itself, and the other one is performing arts. So we say, because it's very confusing. The word wayang is one thing, which is the object itself, the art, the artifact, and the performance. I think these issues still confuse a lot of people, including myself. So one thing is making the puppet itself, and the other thing is to stage this with a collaborative and a lot of other elements that could be performance.
But just to be clear, you didn't grow up on Wayang. It wasn't part of your daily life as a child. You weren't playing with toy puppets or watching performances with relatives. That wasn't growing up in Sidoarjo. That wasn't part of your life. It was after you went to Jogja that you made that turn towards the Wayang tradition and the folk arts. Is that correct?
After I went to Australia, because of the abstract, the 10 years later, because of the abstraction doesn't communicate that well in Sidoarjo. So art was somehow like attempt to communicate for me, to engage, So I guess it's to reduce the isolation. It was a attempt to communicate, and when your attempt is difficult, it must be too challenging for me. So I guess puppet was Wayang Kulit here as a performance. At least it was a way of getting community things happening.
Maybe this would be a good way to segue into your performance piece, Telling Tales, which is a little teaser for your piece, The Life and Death of a Shadow, which I understand is an attempt to try to think through the Wayang Kulit tradition in a contemporary way. Do you want to set up that show for us, Pak Jumaadi, and then we can see the clip? Or
if you want.
The
Life and Death of a Shadow.
It was a Life and Death of a Shadow was a commission work by the Museum of Contemporary Art in Sydney. That was first major sort of kind of commissions after Moscow Biennale, which is like 2 years. Moscow Biennale was 2013, and this was a second major commission that I got from the Museum of Contemporary Art. The story was taking. Actually, a lot of my work is not about the story. It is about story, but it's also about the visual. I'm very much interested in change and make a better shape than before. So it's than what I have made before, better form than what I have made before. So it's an attempt to keep digging and reinvent the visual side of it, rather than as much as it is about the story, I guess. Yes.
So let's take a look.
So it is about the story is about a great elder musicians coming from near Malang who went to my house very regularly, out of the blue. And because of we hang out with other musicians, and he stayed there, and he was slightly deaf, but also he played a kendang very well, and other instruments for Dalam Sulaiman from Borok, from Surabaya, Sidoarjo. And he took us to his house, and he has like a blind son, who is actually puppet master. And this musician, Pak Yahya, his name was so poor. Actually, they have very small bamboo house, very, very small. But it's like the living room was like 3 by 5 bamboo house. And that 3 by 5, like 5 meters of the wall were covered with about like 200 Wayang Kulit made out of paper. They created for his blind son. And the blind son recognized each characters by weighing the weight of the puppet and touching it. And then Yahya, the blind guy, will sit right behind his back, facing the other directions, and that's how they learn notation by vibrating each other, sort of thing. Yeah, so that was the beginning of this death and life of Shadu.
Well, maybe we could look a little bit at the piece
Where do you want to start?
At the beginning, yeah.
Very good. Start at the very beginning. Okay.
It's about a minute and a half. Beautiful. It's really evocative, and the musical element in this piece, and I think all the work you do with shadows is very prominent. There's a group of traditional East Javanese musicians who you're collaborating with?
The main performer was thank you, yes. The main vocal Mas Aris. Actually, he's from Solo. And he's teaching at Samarinda Utai Institution of Indonesia, but he was working for the Indonesian consulate in Sydney. So he was his labor. So his city or his friend was sponsored by the consulate. We are talking about simple production. Things are costly and things, so that's how he ended up with us. I actually proposed this because market had been in Sydney at that time, but the contemporary musician was Mas Sawung Jago, some kind of my mentor. He was the founder of Swami with Iwan Palace. Sure. So it's from rock and popular traditions, and there's Margaret Bradley. She teaches music in Sydney. She married with Mas Arif, also active in Jakarta since from the 80s. So we have a good community here that supporting. It was rely on the support of community because we have a lot of rehearsal with a bit of lower budget, shall we say, and that's how it takes place.
I wonder if it might be worth just jumping in to reflect a little bit, Jumaadi, on the ways in which music influences all of the work that you do. I know that in our conversation we spoke about how you use this very evocative phrasing to talk about how one note or one chord can carry your work for months. So whether it's the literal use of the orchestral work in the Wayang Kulit and shadow puppetry, or paintings and drawings, there's this very sort of multi-sensory envelopment in the sonic world that's part of the work as a whole as well. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I have slight difficulty to hear the voice, Marcus.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I can hear.
I think simply, how is music we have spoken about music as being really inspiring for your work in general. How much is the music carrying not just the shadow puppetry, but also the paintings, like the ones that are in the show at the moment, which are not shadow puppets, they still have a lot of music in them?
I guess that one of the base of my work based on memory, and throughout the times, throughout my practice, I try to develop a strategy to get a quick way of pinning some kind of ideas. For example, like if I was inspired by a particular sound, it has to be stored in my mind or my memory. I cannot do that it will take me some time to get that into me. Or a line of a poem. So that's what actually one. If we do a research, that would be like one first thing, I suppose, that I catch the significant, and then I try to store it within my system, and later when all those larger works are based on smaller works, so like small drawings, very small drawings, or small cutout, potentially from the translation of this idea, like from music, for example. I don't know, I'm not being clear here.
No, that makes sense. Sorry to...
It's like my note-taking system. My note-taking system that, like, from things that I believe were quite authentic for me, like, or color, or a very basic element of visual, which is texture and shape, which I recognize somewhere or have an idea of.
I passed out your handout from the exhibit so people could see, not so much that you should read, but you could read it too. But so people who haven't seen your work could get a little bit of a sense of the visual, the nature of your work, which is so fascinating, so awesome. Excuse me.
Yeah, so what we saw in this piece, a Kion on one side of the OHP, and also some new figures as well. And there seems to be an element of hybridity here in this piece, and reflecting the music as well, with both pop music and gamelan as well. Do you want to speak to, why work with overhead projector? This is a technique which actually developed here at the University of Connecticut in the 1970s. The overhead projector was used by industry, was used by military, and then came into education laterally. And it was the then professor of puppetry, Frank Ballard, who hit upon the idea of using it as a performance medium. And through UConn alumni and friends, there's a technique which spread out around the world. But I'm wondering why, coming from a very rich shadow puppet tradition, which uses a very different way of projecting shadow images on the screen, you decided to work with overhead projector in this piece and many of the other pieces as well. Maybe we could see a little bit more of the techniques, but maybe you could set up the reasoning behind OHP as a medium for us.
I guess I guess it was always about drawing. It was always about picture more than it was about performance. Like small shape. From picture, from drawing, I cut small shape on paper. Then we spend a lot of time within studio. I never have like audience. We don't have like rehearsal or gathering until like maybe a year or 2 years later from the origin of how it evolved. a lot of the time is within the studio. So it's between myself, the drawing, the cutting, and the overhead projector. Overhead projector is its sharpness is unforgiving, much more than like a lamplight or candlelight or torch, and very effective. So I can see the edges perfectly. I can see how it communicates to me personally at that time. It hurt your eyes because it's so bright from time to time, and but it teach me a lot in the way how I understand shape, much more than it would have been if I use like a lamp, for example. So again, like it's back to the visual communication here, about the shape, about the edges, about the roughness or tenderness of how the shadow being produced mainly. And it is very direct. It is very direct drawings. It's like drawing to me. So it's just drawing with paper and knife, and that's how I can create shape rather than. And also, I am quite aware in that art should not communicate too much. As much as I want to communicate, it has to be honest also to other things, like aesthetic or like how unpredictable shape can also, rather than the communication itself.
Maybe we could look at a clip, Bring Me Back My Body, and I Will Return Your Soul, which I think does a good job documenting the experience of performing and watching.
How much of it do you want to start at the beginning?
Yeah, just at the beginning for about 2 minutes maybe.
Turn off the house lights.
extraordinary. I understand what you mean by looking at that, the idea you're saying that you're painting with scissors and cardboard. There's a sense of the live composition being enacted, and with us taking on a new appreciation of the process and of the symbolism as well. We see some of these same figures, the headless bodies, in many of the paintings as well. And I take note as well of Wayang Kulit variants in your work, like the Brahala figure, the giant multi-armed, multiple-head, giant figure there. There's a frisson there which is really interesting, from the personal to the collective symbolic in the work. And to see all the figures spread out around you, it gives a sense of the agency of the creator, right? That we're witnessing your selection process, the choice of the sequential elements of it, and the presentation and orientation on the OHB, which is always shifting. So it does give a very different insight into the visual work, I find. I'd like to look at another piece, though, and maybe you could set this up for us as well, which deals with an environmental catastrophe in Sidoarjo, which is the mud issue. And the piece is The Well and the Gold Nugget. It seems to be more attuned to environmental politics than some of the other work. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, and then we can again see a very short excerpt of that piece?
I guess like my work is always something to do with the environmental, like including the migration of flora, for example, between colonial and post-colonial and environmental. And the previous work was Bringing Back My Body Now, 18 years old, was about the addiction of anti-sleeping tablet that has been consumed by truck drivers and security guards, and also in this case was tofu makers, painting makers in the river of Sidoarjo, because they want to recognize and they have to take this anti-sleeping tablet to wash the tempe, the soil. So that was about that actually. So and this the next word is about the drilling of mining drilling that went wrong in my hometown in Sidoarjo, which is like 15 kilometers away, and the mud that come from the drilling keep going up and up and up, swallow the whole town, like 1,000 of houses has been buried, which including mosque, cemetery, schools, and changes of the ecosystems, because the mud coming from down like 3,000 meters down, which is same level as seabed, salt water coming up, salt mud coming up, which kill whole ecosystem in the river, becoming the sea kind of creature coming in. Anyhow, like, but the mud itself is destroying a lot of hopes and memory and nature. But we are following the traditions on display, a tradition of Surabaya, which is Ludruk. It's often taking the parody of things, seeing the world from the eyes of commoners. Like people in the corner of the street, of the truck drivers, a particular job that they have, the aesthetic of it, and how they digest informations.
For those of you who don't know, Ludruk is a popular theater of East Java, which in the 50s and 60s was strongly associated with the Indonesian Communist Party, and it features clowns who are very disrespectful of the status quo, and transvestites. It's played entirely by men, and has a real popularity still within these Japanese contexts. Let's look at a couple of minutes, though, of this piece, The Well and the Gold Nugget. I'm interested in thinking about this as a Luthrok transform. Do you have that up, John?
From the beginning?
I think I gave a cue.
Oh. Where, sorry.
We can play from there, that's okay.
From,
Yeah, that's fine, where you are right now.
okay.
Maybe, Pat Jumaadi, could you talk over this and tell us what we're looking at? Is there a way for...
Look, I have spoken with visual pragmatic for a long time.
Okay.
Sorry, I guess this is like with the imagine of the shadow of the river. We're looking down into the water, underwater. There's a big river in this forum, which is California, which has long history of colonial history. During the communist killing, we were also taking a lot of properties. So in a way, like we are trying to represent the ecosystem, and also here it's like the violent side of things.
So this is the buried past that we're seeing here, underneath the soil, the headless, the monstrous.
Yes, yes. Past and present too. Marcina was from there, and how things are. It is a violation of civil rights, for example.
Those that lurk below, normally not seen, which are going to be emerged through the drilling then. Here we have an idyllic Javanese village.
Yeah, like still houses by the river.
Houses by the river.
There's a lot to do with river as well, and this I guess this is like the main character. His name is Tunga. By the way, to cut that map and to draw it, it takes us about a day each, at least. And we have usually hundreds of characters each. And so a lot of my process was making the wayang itself, or the cutout itself, prior to the story. So I guess he's looking at this village.
So we see what's under threat then, this way of life, the houses on stilts, the village society.
The story was only one singular freshwater well in the village, and he is the guardian of the well.
I see.
And the whole area was a bit of salty, a little bit, but that's where the whole area was taking their fresh water from that village. And there's his mother and him.
It's lovely the way the music goes from the very classical Pindare and Notabab to the electronic here.
Paswandi is a lecturer at Nirwantikta Institute in Surabaya. He's from learn like Wangi traditions of Eastern Javanese. So I worked with him from like 2003, 2004, and to the current.
That's great. Thank you very much. I'd like, before we go into some of the painting, just one more work. Is that okay? Yeah. This is, I think, one of your more recent works, which is Prau Prau, or Boats, which was a work you created in 2021. Actually, one of my former students was your dramaturg, Lim Hao Ngan.
Oh, really? Yeah, terima kasih, Pak.
Yeah, I'm very glad that you were able to hook up with him. It deals with the history of maritime relations between Australia and Indonesia, I understand. Before we look again at a brief clip, do you want to, what inspired you to turn to boats? Because a lot of your work has been about village life and about land-dwelling people, and here you're looking at a very different kind of axis of communication and transportation. What was your inspiration to work with boats as a theme?
Yes, actually, I have been working with transportations a lot also, like how we move from one place to the next, including like, using imaginary wings like angel, and homemade aeroplane, and bike with family, and it's always been my interest from moving places, or moving mind, or moving shape. It has been my interest, and boats is one of the few archetypal imagery that I'm also, really taking it. Yeah, and also the content within the boat was much more important for me to depict, because we don't see them a lot of the time. Indonesia is like 17,000 islands, and I don't think that we saw all of these boats that coming in and out to Indonesian oceans, seas, to Australia. So, but we saw them on television, for example, like the export of goods from Australia to the Middle East, they have to go through Indonesia, and vice versa. And within it was contained ideologies, dreams, a lot of poetry book was also transported via boats, and people sort of smuggling and medical, chicken leg, rats, seedling for agriculture, part of the electronic devices. So a lot of them were through boats, and all of this civilization was built also because of boats. They were really getting to me. So our relation to water, basically, like an endless relation to water, and I recognize that boat was also the metaphor of this relationship.
Well, let's look at the trailer then. It's Prau Prau. Do we have that up, John?
Bayang-bayang ini bercerita tentang berbagai peristiwa, mimpi, dan kenangan. Tentang perahu-perahu yang dituntun oleh jejak bintang yang telah lama pulang.
Sorry. Oh, so embarrassing.
Brass bands and John Bell, they do go together. I'm reminded of the work of William Kentridge here, and his often he looks at themes of migration and movement and the shadows of people and the objects which they associated with them. There's a real resonance, I think, in thinking about the modern world as a world in movement, migration as a base condition, not as something which is outside of our norm, but as something which is baked into living in the contemporary world.
I've always admired William Kentridge's work.
Yeah, I could see there's a lot of resonance there in the medium of shadow and of some of these mythic themes which you're both gravitating towards. This might be a moment to transition to look at some of the visual, the paintings, many of which are using unusual media. That you work a lot on buffalo hide and on woven cloth from East Bali, I believe. And before we look at the individual work, it might be good to hear why you are interested in those particular media for your visual work. What are the advantages and what are the challenges of working painting on cloth and creating works of art which are made out of buffalo hide?
Yes, I'm kind of fortunate. Somehow life put me there. For example, like with Kamasan, or Balinese cloth, like 12 years ago, we end up living there. And that's how come across the material that I find quite, it took me actually like 7 years later from that time to start making it. And then I moved to a village in Yogyakarta, and I didn't realize it at the beginning. It's just in Imogiri. And then a couple of puppet maker, like using buffalo hide, was approaching to have work, and so I look at the material. It took me a while to do it, and it just like that, it was on the right time, and I was there, and then there are also metal work with my neighborhood area in Imogiri. They were like car painter, like technically painting animal on metal. So I learned how to do it, and through that, how I can apply a picture, or how can conceptually work with the imagery that I had in my mind. And also, how you call it? I lost the word in English, which is I collect a lot of materials in my studio, which much later it speak to me, and also order or something.
Should we look at some of the individual pieces? We get those up on screen, John?
I think it could be worth just also addressing for those who are less familiar with the tradition that the buffalo hide pieces really are drawn in some ways materially from the object of the shadow puppet. And there's an inversion that happens. I mean, we've looked at a lot of the projections tonight, but then when you see the hides themselves, they're also exquisite objects. And most of the images that are in this slideshow are those kinds of works. Some of the works that are in our exhibition are calico-based paintings, but the buffalo hides are sort of sculptural adaptations almost from the medium of shadow puppetry.
Would you like me to advance through the...
Yeah, I think we're just...
Okay.
So this is acrylic on buffalo hide?
Yes, indeed.
I mean, I had not planned to speak specifically to each of these works. I just wanted to show them, and perhaps we can take audience questions.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to note here is that there's a coyote-like motif here, tree of life, in the branches and in the foliage there, which is interspersed. It goes throughout.
Do you want to advance it, Matthew, as you wish?
Yeah,
Or
usually.
one more push off?
Well, I can't reach it for a start.
Okay.
So I think, I think that you obviously have many things to reflect on with the work. I think it's just important to see the objects themselves and to just have a look at what's there. These are not in the exhibition. There will be some buffalo hides in the exhibition which are currently trapped in quarantine. So the exhibition will have a chapter 2, everybody, which is reason to come back if you've already seen the show. Please come again. But I wanted also to include some images here from the studio just to give a sense of the scale of the objects. And sorry, Jumaadi, I've been reading your Instagram page. And to talk about the materiality of that practice. So if you just want to keep scrolling through them, perhaps you could speak to how the works are made. I know there's several artists and art students in the audience who would love to hear about the technique and materiality.
So these hides are translucent. Can you see the colors as they come through, Jumaadi?
Yes, but yes, Professor.
And they're lit then in exhibitions, and so that you can see the shadows normally, or is it? What's your preferred exhibition?
I don't really mind about how to show them. Can have a shadow, but it's a bit tricky, a bit difficult to get it right. Anyway, the paper cutout was particularly for the shadow performance.
Performances, yeah.
But the buffalo hide is made for how it is.
Can we go back, John, to look at one of the buffalo hides?
We've already seen that, so we can skip that. If you scroll back and look at the hides themselves,
Yeah.
maybe this process.
So this is a process one.
So this is buffalo hide, a smaller one. This was like a trial of how it could work. Yeah.
And what's your process? Do you sketch on paper first and then transfer the sketch to hide? Or do you work directly on the hide?
Yes. Sometimes it's direct. I had to sketch it first. Composition is the most important thing for me. Again, so I need to sketch them a lot of sketches going through it.
Are you cutting with chisels or with like X-Acto knife or a combination of those tools?
This is chisel. This is like traditional technique, which I have my helpers and collaborators to work with. I guess like there were 26 different kind of chisels, and to extract some pieces of the hide. And I choose the hide myself often for the color, because you can go to actually hide shop in a puppet making village, and some of them are translucent, some of them are thick, and there are also cow hide, and this is particularly like a buffalo hide, which are quite becoming rarer, shall we say, because of the buffalo is used for agriculture society in Indonesia, and much less function to them. So we got it imported from Sulawesi, from Toraja, that coming into like Japanese town, where these hide are made into puppetry.
This is Gandang. You shop for hide in Kampung Gandang.
In Imogiri.
In Imogiri, okay. So you have a relationship with somebody who makes the hide then, who processes the hide.
That's earlier what I was saying. I have a studio there. I built a studio there in 2013 in like that wooden house. And then the village was actually, they make the saddle puppets. So it was just meant to be. Yeah.
Matthew, I know you had a question that we talked about earlier to do with why the whole question of migration and displacement and why live in two places at once. Maybe this is a good way to
Should we step out of the PowerPoint?
I think that's that's an important question, which I think in some interviews you described yourself as living between Jogja and Sydney. And I'm really curious to know about what is that condition like as a praxis, moving back and forth or living between two places, and how that informs your art making, and specifically.
Sometimes you live in your mind, some other time you live in your realm. Put it that way. And after a while, it's some kind of just moving studio, different temperature, different weather, different neighbors. Because some of the paper that I cut, they come with me inside my luggage, which is watercolor and paper cut out. So, and I still work like a 7 to 5 or something like that. 7 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, in the evening. That's how I work, like almost like just daily working with a bit of entertainment here and there. I guess the information that come into the work is different when you are on different places, and your collaborative and your social slightly different. But I don't think that we have made much of social life to a degree because of the working. I used to be thinking that it would be different, but no. Yeah.
At some point, we wanted to open up to questions from the audience, and both here in person and online. I don't know if this is the time. Okay, we could even turn on the house lights there if we wanted to. So are there questions from the audience that we would repeat into the microphone from this brilliant audience here? Yes, the young, gentle person in the back.
A lot of your work seems to be tied together with this idea of roots, or like a visual motif of roots connecting things. So I was wondering if you could talk about that for a second.
Can you talk about the visual motif of roots that seems to tie together a good bit of your work?
If I can talk about it?
Yes.
I think it's come much later in my practice. The roots. I don't know how to speak about this, but in this painting exhibition, for example, there are also iconography or characters that or shape that occupy composition apparently, and there are moments that I want to unite them too. There's ropes, roots, and all of those much smaller line. I felt that they able to resolve that. A lot of it was for to resolve some kind of visual questions, a visual problem that I face within making compositions. Then it became also a vocabulary by itself. And they mean different when they next to different trees or different other element, I guess. But it's one of the things that fascinate me, the shape and the yeah. It's a bit like squid, like octopus, pentacle. It's yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know how to answer.
Other questions? Yes.
When you were talking about your film in which like you were talking about like how much a boat is just as much as a boat, as a phone can be a boat, as a rat can be a boat. There's like wait, I'm just looking into the
Well, yeah, I know, but I thought you might do a better job of that than me. Is that okay?
Hi. In your film Piraho Piraho, I remember you were talking about how a boat can not only just be a physical vessel, like a literal boat, but also like a rat, a seed or a plant from a place to another, the components of a phone. I was wondering, in some ways, does that relate back to your original education in Sydney? Because you said like you were exposed to teachers who are very much of that conceptual element, and I know it's probably been a little bit of a time since school, but like I feel like in some ways like it's still sort of showing, but also it's merging with that traditional element of how you're reconnecting back to traditional and culturally rich art making. So I was wondering if I could ask about that.
Did you get that, Jumaadi?
I couldn't hear at all, actually, about you.
So I think the question that Amira is asking is really about to reflect a little bit more on the idea of the boat and the idea of migration. I want to throw in as an Australian here as well that it's very hard to read this work from the Australian perspective without taking into account this whole concept of boat people and the violent and oppressive regime of island incarceration that the Australian government enacts on refugees seeking asylum in Australia who come largely from Indonesia to Australia. I think that context is not the deliberate subject of the work, but I definitely would like to just throw in that I think that that's a reflection. Amira's question also speaks to, I think, this idea of the boat as a metaphor for migration and exchange. Is that right, Amira?
Yes.
Yes. Does any of that make sense, Jumaadi?
I think so. Yes. I'm happy with that.
Great.
John,
Yes.
Jumaadi's mic is your computer. So for him to hear the questions, it really should come from the table.
Right,
So
okay.
if you all can
So we
repeat.
can't go rogue with the mic.
Yeah.
Got it.
Very good.
Any questions from Facebook Live, Emily?
Oh, yes, one just came in. Jonathan Summit asks, how does international music, lyrics, and poetry influence your work?
Did you hear that, Jumaadi? How does international music,
lyrics, and poetry.
How does international music, lyrics, and poetry influence your work?
It's adrenaline. Adrenaline, we constantly work with when we work, we have like Leonard Cohen or Bob Dylan or Miles Davis, Gamelan, all of those. That's when I'm in Australia actually, in my studio. It's different kind of studio to Indonesian studio. Indonesian studio is slightly a bit more open, so people can come in to a degree. Whereas in Sydney, like I have an apartment which is all locked, so the music has to be louder. It has huge influence. International music. But somehow with music, you can also imagine shape, imagine texture, and of course the rhythm and things that going around it visually later, and poetry too. It's a huge influence. I don't think that I can articulate this in words. That's the reason why I listen to it and also read it, and it's come out a lot in the sensibility, like a visual sensibilities. It gives me a lot of clue to like whether visually it works or not, or that.
Thank you. Yes, Tom.
I was just going to ask, what is your favorite venue or place that you show your work or perform your work?
Well, clearly it's the University of Connecticut's Contemporary Art Galleries.
Yes.
Before he he gets a chance to say it.
Yeah.
Did you hear that question, Jumaadi? The question was, what is your ideal venue or audience for your work?
Yes, I hear now. Pak Matil comment, terima kasih. Yes. It's a very problematic. What you want is a shifting, changing all the time. Like originally, I want to communicate with my mother, with my people in the village. Then I brought the abstraction into the village, and they couldn't understand it. I felt like I was lost. That was actually, if I want to show, I showed that work to my parents, and then and also to my friends, like school friends, my nostalgic friends. Not in a gallery, on that moment. And then, that's when I encounter with, to do this, actually, I want to communicate, like emotionally or intellectually through art. Then we get along with Wayang Kulit people. That performance, so particularly was only for village, with very specific audience. As you guys know, Professor Bell and Professor Condon, that say the puppetry have very specific audience, which is the community audience. Eastern Javanese is Eastern Javanese audience. Central Javanese will be Central Javanese audience. And then when I have to now, I got really confused, not really confused, but questioning, like, who are the audience of the contemporary art, are they, it is big questions to myself too. You have a romantic idea that you can still show the work in the village context, but who are going to pay the productions and all those issues? And yes, I don't know if I answer or make you more confused. But it is a privilege to show, in the University of Connecticut's Contemporary Art Gallery. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, Rahul.
Yeah, if I understood correctly, I got to know that you see the performances of Wayang Kulit when you are migrated to Sydney. So I would like to ask, and then you became a great observer of the traditional Wayang Kulit performance, and now you are a great performer of modern puppetry, which your performance comes under the umbrella of modernity. And I can see the resemblances of many, the OIT projector with the traditional puppet manipulations as well as with the pop music. So I would like to ask you that as a modern performer and a traditional observer of a Wayang Kulit performer, and the Wayang Kulit now also is undergoing many fluid dynamic changes. Now I would like to hear from you, what are the challenges that the tradition has to overcome to create into a more dynamic space? Or what are, under your idea, the challenges or the pros and cons of the traditional Wayang Kulit and the modern Wayangs?
Do you want to reiterate that?
Sure, yeah. So, this is a situating of your work within the Wayang Contemporaire context. And the question is, what are the challenges for both traditional Wayang Kulit Purwa, and also for creating Wayang Contemporaire? And how do these inform each other, perhaps?
Yes. Excuse for start to answer this is a very, very big questions. And actually, like Wayang Kulit is or performance itself, I have only know it very, very little, and especially with the challenge, I can only speak on my understanding of it. For example, like the the screen is becoming smaller. Like this is a screen. When Wayang Kulit was big, there was no other screen. It was the largest screen, and probably that was the only screen. I guess this is one thing, and the sound outside is also becoming louder. With a lot of competition of instruments and also live machines and everything. Performance spaces like in Java are not many. It used to be performed in villages where everything else was also a bit more silent, but now they have also competition with all the sound. I guess that is the major challenge for start, and whether we still have the loyalty of the audience and how much actually audience has been educated and by what is the government or institution like education have also if they care about the audience or not, because without audience loyalty and audience participations, I think the story even will lose its meanings, and aesthetic also will be transformed. To a degree, contemporary performance has a lot of attempt trying to restore this. But again, contemporary arts audience is much more global than the nostalgic of Wayang Kulit in the villages, with agreeing audience and the performers and the creators. Like, they all know the story. Yes.
Great, thank you. Catherine.
As someone who has seen these performances as a tourist in Yogyakarta, I was just wondering how the form becomes sometimes degraded by the repetition in terms of what's the demand sometimes of keeping a tradition alive is to perform it for tourists, especially if there aren't young people interested in, like you are, in keeping these traditions going and making them connect with contemporary forms. What is sort of your feeling about what happens when these really rich traditions are repeated and kind of maybe dumbed down to become performed for tourists like me that had a sense of the real thing is happening somewhere, but I have no access to it.
What happens when rich traditions like Wayang are repeated continually for tourists and in a way dumbed down for that market, for that audience?
And speaking specifically to the touristification of Wayang in Jogja, where there are nightly performances in venues like Sono Budoyo at a very low level of artistic standards. Does your work respond to that touristification of Wayang in any way or form?
I mean, I don't want to be to answer these questions. I don't want to be a bad boy of the arts, but the idea of museums and theater spaces these days are also very much catered. The whole European museums are catered for tourists. Sydney Opera House, for example, the performances are for tourists. I don't think that we can deny the elements. I guess one way of seeing it that is particularly made for the occasions. Like Wayang Kulit, there is Wayang Kulit for wedding, and there is Wayang Kulit for Watan, and Wayang Kulit in Kraton, and this is just Wayang Kulit for tourists. Bad luck. Sorry.
I think maybe we have time for a couple of more questions, and then we might want to let people go for dinner or something. Emily is finding...
There's another question coming from Facebook.
Facebook question.
When you travel and put together performances with local volunteers, you always leave a community behind everywhere you go. do you have a personal philosophy about bringing people together, and did the isolation of COVID change that outlook?
When you travel and do performances for audiences in different places, you leave behind that community. So what's the second part of the question? Sorry.
Do you have a personal philosophy?
Do you have a personal philosophy
about bringing people together?
About bringing people together.
And did the isolation of COVID change that?
And did the isolation of COVID change that?
The isolation of COVID changed that. The previous show with Homie as a dramaturg, Professor Cohen is one of Professor Cohen's ex-student. It was very challenging because all the communication was done online. That's one thing, and also the view of whether we are going to stage it or not constantly. And that's down to it, to the technicality also, contract with all the musicians and puppeteers keep changing. And COVID changed how it has been produced and how it is staged, particularly. Yeah, I mean, bringing people together was a very romantic idea.
Great. I'm feeling like we can wind down or bring this to a close. It's been really exciting. I don't know if Mukushla or Matthew or Jumaadi have closing thoughts they'd like to share.
I just hope that we'll one day be able to bring you actually to the University of Connecticut. It's a very rich practice. It resonates with much of the things we do here as well. And thank you for sending your artwork our way. We look forward to the second installment of the Beaglehide pieces which are on their way.
I thank you very much, Makusla Robinson, my old friends here, and thank you very much for hosting my show and give me this time for University of Connecticut, and thank you, Professor Matthew Cohen and John Bell. Thank you very much, and apologize I couldn't make it this time in person. I would really love to. Things shift and changes here.
Next time, we're so happy to have the work here in the flesh. I think that people can come and see the work and they get a sense of you as a person as well, and that's a very beautiful thing to be able to do.
I was able to drop by to see migration of flora, super awesome, as they say in the art world. And it will be up through May 8th, or not May 4th, but May 8th.
It will be up into May.
Into May, that's awesome. And thank you, Jumaadi. Thank you Emily Wicks and Anthony. And I wanted to say that those of you who live in this area, please come next Tuesday and Wednesday, to see Ramayana, A Tale of Trees, at 7 p.m. Actually, the shows might be sold out, but maybe you can slip in. Super exciting right here. And for those who are joining us online, our next online event will be on Thursday, April 26th, the forum about the making of Feel Your Best Self. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jumaadi in Sydney, Australia. Thank you to the Facebook watchers and listeners, and thank you to everybody who's here in the room with us.
Thank you.